All right, we are back for Roundtable Ravens episode number 12. I am here with my co host Billy Melissa to talk all about Ravens football, and we have so much to talk about. Just yesterday on Wednesday, the Ravens, well, Jesse Minter rather, introduced the new coordinators. Anthony Weaver as defensive coordinator, Declan Doyle as offensive coordinator, and then Anthony Levine as the special teams coordinator. I do want to start by saying I do feel like he got the short end of the stick there. They cut him off a lot.
I know.
and
I was like, let the guy speak. He's a Super Bowl champion. Have some respect.
I know. I felt really bad because I was like, I liked what he was saying. I was like, oh, this is getting interesting. And then they're like, let's move on. But of course, I mean, you have to get in a lot of questions with the other coordinators, which I also felt it was very Anthony or the very Jesse Minter centric and
Mm.
not so much about the coordinators. But that's just me nitpicking. We don't need to get all into that. Um, there was a lot that was said. There was a lot that they went over. Obviously, and we're gonna jump right into it right now, talking about Declan Doyle. Declan Doyle had, gave insight onto what his offense may look like. He said a lot of interesting things about Lamar Jackson being involved in the interview process with him, speaking to him, them being close in age. There's a whole lot. So to start, I did want to bring up one of the most interesting aspects of what Doyle said to me was the fact that they're going to be transforming the offense from the ground up. I think it's really
hmm
important that they are doing so. Let me find exactly what he said. Yeah, he said, "quote We're still in the early stages of really stripping this down to the studs and rebuilding it around the personnel that we have here."
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't believe that they have to like necessarily do that to a degree where they're stripping things down in a negative way. But it is very important, I think, to move away from the John Harbaugh era. And I think they're doing that right now, obviously, with the coaching staff they brought in, but also with Doyle now running the offense. He did make note of the fact that when he was with Ben Johnson with the Chicago Bears, he ran the day-to-day defense while Ben Johnson ran the offense, excuse me, while Ben Johnson ran the offense during the games. Um, but he said Ben Johnson had the stamp on everything. Now he has that stamp. So I just
Yeah.
think it's really interesting that he made that designation. Like basically, it's like, hey, I'm in charge.
Yeah, he was like he got a lot of questions about that actually. And I think one or two, I think the first time he was asked, he didn't really answer the question. I think some guy was like, how are you going to go about play calling because you've not done that yet? That's not something that you've had experience with. Like, what are you preparing for? Like, what's your preparation process? I think he danced around the question, but then he seemed to get down to it and he said something really interesting about going onto the field and walking through and like simulating these plays and that he
Mm,
does. I really like that. I think it's nice to, especially if you haven't got that playing experience in the league, to kind of feel it out, feel what that could possibly feel like. And I'm excited. I think that he's got that, like, he's the same age as Lamar. We've mentioned that before. And I think that he's going to connect really well with this offense.
definitely. And then another thing that we didn't write down, but just to briefly mention, they were talking. He got a question about voluntary OTAs, and he said that he expects everybody to be there.
Yep,
He
love
said,
that.
I know that they're voluntary, but he's like, but if you have a championship mindset, you will be there on the field. And I think that's also a really important thing to take note of because it's true. Like if you really believe that this you're on a team that can go somewhere, you have to be there no matter what, and not be those kind of players that just go, oh well, whatever, I don't got to be there. It's voluntary. Um, so yeah, but it's really exciting to hear Doyle speak in the way that he was speaking because we don't quite know because he was under Ben Johnson what exactly he's going to be doing. But I
Yeah.
think one of the best questions was asked like if you could explain your offense in 3 words. He said, quote, the way we want our offense to look, the non-negotiables are that we are physical, we are detailed, and we are explosive.
Yep.
And I think that's really important, especially the physical aspect of it. Whether or not these are terms like, buzzwords that every coach uses, I think it's important because obviously we know the Ravens defense has been physical, and that's the expectation with Jesse Minter and Anthony Weaver teaming up together for that. But the offense hasn't exactly been called physical. That's not to say Derrick Henry is not physical. He's one of the most physical
He
running backs
sure is
in
just
the
stiff arming
entire
people
league.
down.
Yeah, exactly. But I think there's been kind of that move away from that and more so on you want to be speedy and you want to be more finesse. But I think it's
I think
important.
precise is
Yeah,
the word.
yeah. I think it's important to go back to being physical because you need your offensive linemen to play bully ball and open those running lanes for Derrick Henry as well as Lamar Jackson when he has designed runs. You know, you
Mhm.
want them to push the other team around and then also opening up the playbook to get those explosive plays in there.
And that's what I really liked about him demanding that kind of expectation that if you want to win a championship, you're going to be here because they're in a completely new season of life. They've got a new everything. They can, for the first time in Lamar's career, completely cleared out the everything and everything's starting again. And so you can't just come in when it gets to training camp and expect to kind of go back to the system that you're going to. And I think maybe there's going to be a revival among the team to want to show up for those things, to want to. They might feel energized by this new chapter. And yeah, I think he's right. Like we just need to go back to fundamentals and then we need to perfect those, build on that, and then we can afford to be physical and all the other words that he was throwing around.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And this is something that he had brought up. He was on the Ravens podcast previous to this introductory podcast, and he said that they're gonna make it um, uh, a requirement to go after those big plays. Like that's what they're seeking. And the 2024 Ravens offense is a
Yep.
perfect example of that. You know, Lamar Jackson was throwing the ball all over the field, as well as rifling off those big runs, as well as Derrick Henry rifling off those big runs. It was just clicking in a way that obviously they got him all the way through to the deep in the playoffs, but then they were knocked out. But I mean, like, I think a marriage of that style with that physicality is going to pay dividends hugely for this team.
Yeah, and I like that he's like, I know what's in the room. I know the potential. I've seen it. It's happened before. It just got lost along the way. And he's not being unrealistic about his expectations. He's not going in there demanding players to be something that they're just not. He knows what it can be. And I think that that belief is going to be enough to kind of push them onto this new era.
Yeah, definitely. And going back at the top of what we were going to discuss with Doyle, I think it's really important. Or rather, I was really intrigued by the fact that he did say that he talked to Lamar Jackson several times
Mhm.
through the interview process, but he made it known that, you know, he was trying to talk to Lamar about what Lamar needed to be successful. But I think that also kind of points to something that has been a problem under John Harbaugh in that Lamar maybe had a little bit too much power or too much say in the overall aspect of the offense and just in the team in general. That's not to say that he's not the face of the franchise, which we know that he is. But I think if you put too much on him as the only lone player that needs to be successful, you end up with a 2025 season where everything unraveled because he was hurt.
Yeah, exactly. There's been a back and forth about that for the entirety of Lamar's career. And I think that there was a time when Lamar felt that he didn't have any control. And then I think, you're right. I think that there has been a time when maybe he's almost had not even too much control, but just to the point where it's like sometimes we're just trusting him to be this Superman. We're trusting him a little bit too much. And he can absolutely do that, but he shouldn't have to be doing that every game. And I always think back to there's a clip where Harbour is like, I think it's like 4th and 1, and it's the goal line. It's like season on the line situation. He's like, Lamar, like, do you want to go for it? And Lamar's like, yeah, let's go for it. And I think that that was like the turning point in their relationship. And I think and then EDC went out and got all these players that Lamar was asking for. And he was like looking at the draft thing. And I think, going back to everyone's in their roles and everyone can contribute to it and say, what they think will help elevate the team. But we're going back to this is what you're doing. And I think Doyle was saying something about like, grounding Lamar in those design plays. And he's noticed something with his like feet and his eyes that just aren't like quite clicking. And I thought that was really a great like sign for day one, that he's already figured out maybe what we can do to, yes, go into those design plays, but then also if it does adjust and we have to play Superman ball, then the rest of the offense can align with that. And it's not just Lamar out there scrambling and potentially getting hurt.
Yeah, I think to add to what you're saying about the plays with Lamar, Doyle did say that there's two levels to Lamar Jackson play. There's the first where they practice and they drill and practice, and that's the first. And then the second is what he can do with with his arm and with his legs. So
Yeah.
it's not so much that he's calling an audible, it's just the way that he processes the field and processes his defense and
Yeah.
everything that it may change in an instant. But I think that's important because if you just tell Lamar that is your only job here, like I got the offense, but your job is just to play ball, I think
Hmm.
that's gonna work really well. Except for, of course, if it's a situation where like the game's on the line and 2 point conversion, you want to go for it, and he goes, "Yeah, I want to go for it." That's different, you know what I mean? Obviously, but I think taking away the overarching aspect of team decisions off Lamar is what you need
Yeah.
to do because yeah, he needs to have a say in who they bring in. Like he's trying to recruit Hollywood Brown. Sure, absolutely. That's a deep consideration, but at the same time, you need to let EDC do his job and let the front office do their job as well to bring in the best available players as well to support Lamar, whether or not they are players that he specifically wants.
Yeah. And I think Lamar might feel with this regime change that pressure come off of his shoulders. He might connect and click with this, as we spoke about multiple times, this younger coaching staff room. He might just feel like now he can kind of trust what they're going to put out. So I'm definitely excited to see how their relationship flourishes. And I like the respect that Declan's shown to Lamar because he's the guy that's been here and he is the face of the franchise and his opinion does matter and keeping him happy does matter. So I liked how he handled all of those like offensive questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and being that they are close in age, that could also benefit both because,
Yep.
it's somebody that's like, again, we talked about those young dynamic coaches, and that's just kind of the way that the league is changing. And I think that's going to be important because maybe Doyle sees the field or sees the offense in a much fresher way than what was used to before with John Harbaugh and everybody there. With Todd Monken, especially, Todd Monken's he's an old guy, so I mean, like, he might have been set in his ways, whereas Doyle can bend certain ways or whatever. So I think it's gonna do, they're gonna do really well together.
Yeah, he said he's grown up in the world that they've grown up in. He sees the world the way they do. And I think even just being able to connect on that personal level helps benefit what happens on the field too.
Definitely, definitely. Jumping right into the defensive side of the ball, we did get a lot of like really great answers from Anthony Weaver. Kind of the
Yep.
same stuff we always expected Anthony Weaver was going to say. He was the same way with the Dolphins, smiling ear to ear. Kind of
Such a nice guy.
no nonsense kind of guy. But he did say something that I have a bone to pick with. He was praising the pass rush, and he brought up Kyle Hamilton, he brought up Smith, and then he brought up Malachi Starks, and he brought up a lot of players that I feel he says we got dudes that can get there, but I don't think that's really true. I don't think that's kind of. He was offering some coach speak, and he was being very, very. I'm not saying that those guys are not solid, but I think the issue is you need to stop relying so much on Kyle Hamilton to be your pass
Yeah.
rusher. Not that he can't. Obviously, we saw what he could do in that role, being close to the line of scrimmage. And sure, absolutely. But I think you need to change things up and have a true pass rusher in there and not rely on the guys that were there in 2025 that really didn't get after anybody.
I think he's being kind. I think he knows not to push any buttons because maybe they don't know just yet what's happening. Maybe they've got talks about who's coming back. Obviously, we're going to talk about who they've teased maybe returning. And I don't think he really knows where that lands. And he's the first, he doesn't want the first thing to be like that he comes on to the team and says, pass rush isn't good. We need to fix that because that just creates a complete like
Yeah.
distrust between the two. So like I get it, but it's true, it's something he needs to address. He acknowledged the loss of Matabike. He did say there are guys that are there that can do this. But yeah, I think he knows the job is we got to fill that out a little bit. But also we said before as well, like last season was a fluke season.
Yeah.
It's not usually how the Ravens play. Maybe the players just weren't getting the most potential out of them. Maybe obviously he's not seen them play yet. He's not been in any like mini camps or training camps just yet, so he doesn't know. But he's been in the room before, so
Mhm.
those guys, I think he knows how to get them back to their potential so that
Yeah.
people around them can flourish and just be in their positions.
Yeah, and you talked about Travis Jones and everybody, and like he's
Yeah.
excited to get everybody back that he worked with back then, and that's great. And hopefully he can get the best out of those guys. But regardless of that, you think about it in the overarching aspect of the AFC, especially the teams that are up there, the Buffalo Bills, and then you got the Patriots now. Those are all teams that can kill you through the air. So you need a strong pass rush, regardless of what Anthony Weaver said. You need a pass rush, and the Ravens
Yeah.
just simply, even before, with Matabuke, they still don't. You need that guy, whether like we brought up multiple times, that's a Max Crosby, that's a whoever. One player that was brought up, obviously, because Jesse Minter's not the head coach, is Odafe Oweh was brought up. And it kind of, in my opinion, Minter sort of hinted that that could be a possibility of a reunion. He didn't
He definitely had a
outright,
little smile on his face
he
there at the
did.
end of the sentence.
Yeah, when he was asked about it, he chuckled and he smiled and then he talked about it. The question was, how did you get the best out of him? And similar to what
Mm.
we're talking about with Lamar, Minter simply said that he got the best out of Owe by basically putting it down to the simplest form of what he was coaching him to do, and that's why he had a bounce back year with under the Chargers defense, which was a fantastic defense, and that's why Minter is now head coach. I think that's important. I think that's something that he may want to work with, and he could be, bending DeCosta's ear to go and get him. Owe is a free agent, pending free agent, unrestricted. He's gonna get something along the lines of people are saying there's predictions about like 19 million a season, 20 million a season, something along those lines. I think if you give him a 3-year deal around there, it's not necessarily going to break the bank for the Ravens. That annual amount gets him near like Josh Sweat from the Cardinals, who got 12 sacks and he only got 7.5, I believe it was. So, I mean, production wise, I mean, he's a dynamic player, and I think it would be really smart for the Ravens to kind of bring him over.
Mhm.
Minter did say that he earned the right to be a free agent. And I think that was the biggest hint. I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? Do you mean
What does that mean, Minter?
yeah, Minter, are you saying that he earned the right to be a free agent, meaning that like he earned the right to stay with you?
What is it? No, I like the idea of Oweh coming back. We've mentioned needing a pass rusher. I like a guy who knows the scheme. I like a guy who knows the team, the building, all of it. He's just turned 27. He's been in the league a long time. He can be that presence. He can be that strong, presence. And I think when he left Baltimore, there was a little chip on his shoulder. I think he didn't have the nicest words to say about, how it ended.
Mhm.
But now, completely new era. Minter's over here. You have that established relationship with him. And yeah, I liked what Jesse said about creating that environment for him so that he can play with confidence and just stripping it back to, what they were asking him to do. And he said it was like allowing him to have freedom as a pass rusher. And I
Mhm.
think that just that relationship and what we've seen through Minter and the players that have spoken about working with him before is that relationship building. And sometimes that's just all you need to know that you can come over and be safe and get the best out of you. So I'm all for Oweh coming home if Minter and EDC can make that happen.
Definitely, and I think Anthony Weaver would probably be really stoked about being able to utilize a player of that degree. I mean, he has
Yeah.
30.5 sacks in 5 seasons. He has 7 forced fumbles. I mean, the dude can play.
Yeah, he was making an impact a few years ago. Like he was the guy on the defense.
2024, he
So
had 10 sacks.
yeah,
Yeah,
I would love
so
it. I would love to see him do that over here again.
and again, obviously the connection there, connection with the Ravens, as well as, he worked directly with Minter and Minter got the best out of him. It only makes sense for if the Ravens are going to go after a pass rusher. And if somebody like Max Crosby is not attainable, then you definitely go after Owe. Even both, getting both would be incredible. I'm not saying that would happen, but, it would be incredible for that to happen.
Yeah. And I will say, because we kind of mentioned knowing our competition is Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes year after year. I saw a really interesting comment online of saying Minter's built his staff around that, or like the Ravens have built their staff around that. Like Minter was facing Mahomes 2 times a year, Weaver was up against Josh Allen 2 times a year. They were both planning for those offenses. And so kind of we've got the upper hand this season. We have guys in the building who have had to, play against them regularly. And I think again, just adding to those people who are kind of familiar with them, having Oweh come in, who has had to play against Patrick Mahomes many times over the year as a Raven and as a Charger would be
Hmm.
great.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, and again, you're looking at the upper echelon AFC teams right now. The Bills still are up there. The Patriots are there.
Yeah, now they're there.
yeah, there's some dark horse teams that can come out of nowhere next season. Teams that are on the rebuild, not the
Jaguars
Dolphins.
started coming out at the
Yeah,
woodworks.
yeah, rebuilt teams that not the Dolphins, but everybody else seems to be doing well. So we'll see what happens. But going right into more about the defense and Weaver, again, similar to what Doyle had said about his operation with Ben Johnson, is similar to what Jesse Minter did say about how him and Anthony Weaver are going to work together. So everybody's curious, like, how is it going to work? What is Weaver's real role while Minter is
Yeah.
calling plays? But again, I think it's really important the way that he explained it. Basically, Anthony Weaver will be running the day-to-day defense. He will be in that room. He will be working with everybody directly. And then obviously on game day, he's going to do everything in his power to make sure that Minter is ready for those games. Obviously, they're going to be creating the defense together through training camp, through preseason, but moving on beyond that, while Minter calls plays, Weaver is that guy.
Yeah, and I liked the humility with which Anthony spoke about that. He was very transparent and honest, saying that he was disappointed not to get a head coach position. But then he really said something I thought was quite profound about, he came back to his why of being here and he wanted to be a part of a group that is forever. He wants to be a part of a Super Bowl. He wants to be part of a story, a Super Bowl winning team that can like live in these halls. And, I think that just being able to do that and put him in that position to just be that leader, just that guy that's kind of, rallying the team and sure, maybe contributing to designing some plays, but really just allowing him to strengthen his leadership roles because then next year, we know this, every year he comes out as a great head coaching candidate and he's kind of strengthening himself to go forward in that next step of his story.
Yeah, definitely. And exactly what you just said. I think it was also really nice for him to be like, he's like, I'm here to serve. He's like, I'm here to
Yeah.
serve and impact players. And he's like, I would rather do that on a great team than not do it at all. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, of course, this is like the second or third time that he's been up for a head coach position, didn't get it, and with the Ravens too. So
Yeah.
you would think that somebody would be upset about being passed over, but instead he was like, no, I'm going to go back and be not even a play calling defensive coordinator, but a defensive coordinator under Jesse Minter, which just goes to show again his leadership and how good of a coach he really is. He's like, look, it sucks, it happened, but like let's move forward, and I'm here to help the Ravens win, which we both firmly believe that's what's going to happen because Anthony Weaver is just that guy.
Yeah, and he was saying about he was praising the position. He was saying, a Baltimore defensive coordinator, that's the job everyone wants. He was saying that's the dude in the league. So like, he knows the weight on his shoulders. He knows the legacy he's carrying on. And I think he can really help everyone get back to that, that really defensive bullies of Baltimore era.
Yeah, and we've said this before. The defense is what Ravens have been known for since their inception.
Yep.
They've been known for that. Not to say that they weren't that in 2024 and the years past. It was more of a marriage, a really good balance. But now, I think I'm not saying that the defense is going to be taking over the offense at all by any means, but I think they're going to get back to a really strong physicality where people are going to go, oh crap, like the defensive Ravens are back.
Yeah, and it brings us on to, talking about Mike McDonald when he was in with us, we were known for our defense. It took a while, it took a few weeks for him to kind of warm up both seasons. But when he did and really got going, like we looked scary on defense, we looked unstoppable. And I think, Jesse Minter spoke about that relationship with Mike McDonald. They worked together in Baltimore. He said he still reaches out to him and talks to him as like a mentor figure. And that's a guy whose input I definitely want over in Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, obviously, when they're playing each other, that's not going to be the case. But if,
Nope. But there's no
McDonald,
threat really.
right. But
NFC, AFC.
yeah, if McDonald is giving him any kind of advice or whatever, and Minter is trying to mimic that defense in any way, shape, or form, like look out because, Seattle literally got to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl on their defense. That is not a slight against Jackson Smith and Jigba or Sam Darnold or Zach Charbonnet or any of the offense, Kenneth Walker, none of that.
Nope.
But that
Just how
defense was
impactful that defense was.
yeah, that defense was insanely good. So if that can even remotely be mirrored over to the Baltimore Ravens, that's exactly what it could look like. Even though the Seahawks were known for their defense in 2025, the offense was still rocking along. And I don't think in any way, shape, or form that the defense is going to outpace Lamar Jackson if he can get back to what he was in 2024 and beyond that, his two-time MVP performances. But then you go, crap, we got to worry about the Ravens defense, and Lamar
Yeah.
Jackson is just balling out. Like, look out.
Yeah. And teams do, they were saying teams prepare for, like we said about, preparing for what Lamar can do versus what the offense can do. Now they're going to have to do that with the defense too, is what we hope this new era of Baltimore football feels like. And I think also Minter kind of going to McDonald shows also some humility and having to like, he knows that McDonald's played with many of these direct or like coached many of these players directly. And
Mm.
so he's just getting ahead on his homework. And I like that. I like a coach that isn't just doubling down on his own ideas. He seems really open to hearing from everyone. And I think he knows when to take when to take that advice and when to leave it.
Definitely, definitely. Again, we talked about this when the coaching staff was getting put together. It's a very exciting time for Ravens football. I think this new coaching staff, they're heavy hitters across the board. They're heavy hitters.
Yep.
So I think it's gonna be really exciting to see what they can do in year one. Obviously, there could be some growing pains. Sometimes there is with new head coaches and
Yep.
new regimes, but this Ravens team, the core of the team is still there. They're still going to be the same players like Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson are still there. Roquan Smith is still there. A lot of those great players are still there. There are some holes that need to be filled in free agency in the draft, especially free agency. One of the biggest being still, we got less than or like 2 weeks until I think 2 weeks. I know March 9th is when
The
a
temporary.
little less than 3 weeks right now
Yeah.
is when the tampering period can begin on March 9th. And there has been zero movement on Tyler Linderbaum getting a contract. It's getting concerning at this point. There's been reports all over the place that the contract may or may not happen. I heard one that said that there could be an injury concern with them, a long time
Mm.
injury concern. I don't know how true or not true that is. I don't see that being the case, but the fact of the matter is, him not getting a contract yet is concerning.
I mean, he knows his worth. He knows. He knows a lot of teams could use him. He knows the Ravens could really use him. We don't want to disrupt any more on that offensive line because what is working is him and it is Pat Ricard and it is Ronnie Stanley. It's kind of more the right side we need to figure out. He knows, and he knows that and I think his agent also knows how much he's worth, and I'm sure they've had, you know, interest floated about the means that he's I think he's standing firm on it. I'm getting flashbacks to Lamar's contract, and that came down
Hmm.
to the wire. It came down to draft night, so it's likely that that could happen. But I think Tyler's going to want to stay in Baltimore. I think
Hmm.
he just wants to be paid for that because he wants the price that reflects his worth, and I get it.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna get a huge contract. He might be the highest paid center after he gets his new deal for sure. He's 25 years old, gonna be 26 this year. The dude's a game-wrecking center,
Yep.
and he deserves to get paid. Again, he's only 26 years old. There are questions about his ability to kind of defend those bigger edge rushers, but it's not something that's like, oh, like it's not impacting his game
Yeah.
whatsoever to a hugely negative point. But he is dynamic when opening those running lanes for Derrick Henry, and like you said, Pat Ricard being there too. Hopefully he'll be back as well. But the fact of the matter is, like, he is that guy in the center department, and finding offensive linemen like him is so hard. It's so
Yeah.
hard. Every year, the during free agency, you barely see offensive linemen moving. You get like maybe five good deals, and those teams, like Joe Thuney going from the
Mm.
Kansas City Chiefs to the Bears was shocking because I was like, how the hell did they not pay him? And look what happened. So that's what I mean. Like,
Yes.
if you're not prepared to pay that guy, they will go to another team and they will transform that offensive line. And the Bears, obviously, not that Caleb Williams wasn't under duress by any means, but like he helped solidify that line for sure. And the Chiefs line was crap after he left. So you kind of look at it that way. You got to pay Linderbaum because if he goes anywhere else, that guy, he's going to be a Hall of Fame offensive lineman for sure.
100%.
For sure. And
100%.
you cannot let that guy walk out of the building.
No, and it matters for Lamar too. He needs someone he can trust. He can't make those Superman plays if he's behind someone that he doesn't know can defend and protect him.
Hmm.
And, as much as I would love for him to just take a nice little deal and stay here, it's completely what he should be doing is standing on that. And exactly what you said, like you can't disrupt that middle. You just can't. It's not worth it. It's not worth the long-term problem. So I think EDC is probably up through the night trying to figure that out. I think probably also trying to figure out Lamar's situation so that he can then work on that.
Hmm.
There's a lot of money that needs to be figured out before he can really solidify that. I don't think it's anything to worry about personally. I
Hmm.
think the Ravens know they'd be very stupid to let him walk out the building. They've learned from doing that and allowing that to happen in the past, and they are good at keeping guys in the building. They're good at doing that. It takes some time. We'll get there, hopefully, and hopefully he will be center because I don't want to see anyone else in that position personally.
Yeah, definitely. Right now, the Athletic has him 71 million 4-year deal, which would pay him about 17.75. That would put him right underneath Creed Humphrey, also from the Chiefs, and then right above Cam Jurgens from the Eagles. So I mean, like, I think he probably gets a little bit more. I think he does get
Yeah,
paid that extra point,
2, 3.
yeah, 0.25 million to whatever to push him a little bit above um, in that center pay per year. You got to pay the
Yeah.
guy. You got to pay the guy. I think this is the top free agent. I think you pay him. Maybe you lose some guys, of course, but I think those guys being lost compared to
Yeah.
Linderbaum is just pales in comparison. You got to pay the guy.
There's no one on amongst the other free agents that is worth, even a combo of the two over. As much as I respect every single one of them,
Mhm.
and I would love to see them all back next season. Linderbaum's the guy. He just figure that out, just sort that out, and then you can kind of figure out the rest from there.
Yeah, definitely. One of the other free agents that we'll touch on, which again, we've talked about him before, and we'll see what happens. But it's Isaiah Likely. He is also one of those free agents that we kind of don't know. Are they going to bring him back? Are they not going to bring him back? He did have a down year. Um, I don't know.
I don't think it
Right?
will affect his price anywhere else. So I think a lot of teams would get a lot of value out of him. I would love to see him back. I controversially might have even loved to see him back more than Mark Andrews, just because he's younger. And I think, keeping someone around who's reliable. Mark's got the size on him. Mark's good at that. And we've got a special design play, which is, the Mark Andrews tush push
Mhm.
situation. So I can see why we did. But yeah, it's so ridiculous because I'm like, I would love to keep all of them. I
Mhm.
think that relationship between Lamar and Likely is important, especially if we're going to lose people like Rashad Bateman, which we might be doing that because we've seen how he's kind of acted out this offseason, even though he says he was hacked. Don't get it twisted. He thinks he was hacked, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna be a rough off season, and I think people have to prepare for the purge. But as long as they can get Linderbaum back, I think that's a solid place to start.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, it would be sucked to for Likely to go because I see him kind of like a Colby Parkinson from the Rams and how he's utilized and how
Yeah.
he exploded towards the end of the season. Now you look at what he can do. Same thing with Isaiah Likely. Like, I mean, he's obviously not a first or second year player, but I just think that I think it's the tip of the iceberg for what he can be, especially as a pass catching weapon, red zone weapon. But
Mhm.
if that price is too high, especially with, you got to go and get Linderbaum's contract done first. Then you kind of like look at it. They did pay Mark Andrews, which they probably shouldn't have, in the sense of like if
Yeah.
you were going to bring anybody back, I think you probably could have let him walk, and then you could have instead brought Likely back. But Mark Andrews' leadership is the deciding factor there. Like obviously Isaiah Likely is not. I'm not saying he's not a leader, but he's not a Mark Andrews leader.
No, Mark's been, he's 30 and Likely's 25, and they serve two different purposes on the offense. And I think, Likely's really good at making those reliable catches. And we've seen when Mark's been injured, that's when Likely really steps up because when Mark's good and he's in his prime, there's not really as much need for him. So and I think obviously he was injured at the beginning of last season, so he didn't really get the stats that reflect his talent last season. But we've seen he's a dynamic player, even if sometimes he messes up with a single toe on
Yeah.
the goal line.
Yeah, definitely,
I don't begrudge
definitely.
him that. It's not his fault. We shouldn't be coming down to those. And that's what I liked also going back to Anthony Weaver is him mentioning those fourth quarter losses.
Yeah,
Being like,
yeah.
we're fixing that, don't worry about that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we will be back next week to talk more about free agency because it's just coming rapidly fast. Obviously, hopefully, we'll be talking about a Tyler Linderbaum deal. Maybe not. I don't know.
Please.
Maybe that's going to come down to the wire. Maybe they're, because they also have to sort out Lamar Jackson's extension, which they haven't done yet either,
It's a
which
lot.
is going to open up the cap space a whole hell of a lot. So Ravens have a lot to do. They just introduced their coaching staff. Maybe they're already getting busy doing this. Lamar Jackson gets an extension. Then Tyler Linderbaum gets an extension. Then you start to see these other like lower totem pole free agents get their deals. We'll see. We will be back next week to talk all about that. This has been Roundtable Ravens episode number 12, I think I said. Thank you, Billy, for joining me once again. We will be back next week.